This is Layla Rose from the Hathor Mystery School. So, today we have an exciting training, which is the rise of the dark feminine. You've probably noticed that we see a lot of this energy, especially on social media right now. We see a lot of celebrities that are embodying this energy because it's so seductive and so magnetic. It's very common and normal to feel curious about this type of energy, right? And so, the first thing we have to understand with this energy is that a lot of people are afraid usually of the dark feminine because she embodies this very powerful and assertive energy. And a lot of times, people that are afraid of their own shadow are going to be afraid of the dark feminine because she represents truth. And so the thing with dark energy is that a lot of times as well, I hear that, the dark forces, the dark is bad, which is a complete suppression of the dark feminine. And any extremes, right? So untamed feminine energy or suppressed feminine energy, those are two extremes, right? And they're both not desired, not desirable because they create extreme symptoms. And so, the first thing I want to talk about, first of all, I just realized that I made a mistake. I wrote the same thing on both sides, but I'm going to explain what the wounded dark energy is versus the divine dark energy. But I want people to really understand that dark energy isn't bad. What people call bad is because this dark energy is also the same energy as war, violence, and rape when it's not mastered, when it's not integrated. And it gives that very predatory behavior to someone, right? Which is why people are afraid of that energy. So the two are actually two different levels of consciousness. So you can be in that wounded type of energy as a teenager, for example. And as you grow and you evolve, you go through your spiritual journey, and then you become this divine dark embodied, women. And so these are just two different levels of consciousness that we can move around. And obviously, most people get stuck in the wounded energy throughout their life because it's a very personal process. So, a few signs, I would say, of the wounded dark energy. We actually see her a lot on TikTok. It's like that very teenager vibe of the dark feminine. So manipulation, which is a form of control. So the wounded dark feminine wants to control outcomes. If a guy doesn't like her and she likes him, she wants to use some love attraction or rituals or spells to attract him, to manipulate him emotionally. And yes, it's gonna work, but those TikToks are not talking about the law of karma. So there's always karma with that. Another sign is shame, and obviously it's subconscious shame. It's not something that we think about every single day, but yeah, so feeling shame of our true self, of our full expression, insecurity, rage. Rage can be great if it's sacred rage, if it's coming from the heart, but if it's coming from a place of wounded energy, it's very different. Emotional outbursts as well. There's nothing wrong about being emotional, but the wounded energy is that type of it's an emotion that's anchored into fear and shame, so it's very different. And so other signs as well could be depression, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, any type of extremes, right? The hustle and burnout cycle is also part of the wounded dark feminine. Disconnection from her heart, so she's very guarded. She's very confident, right? She's very playful, but she's very guarded. Her heart is completely armored. And the last one we're going to be talking about is external validation. So when she dresses up a certain way, when she puts on some makeup or anything that's like sexy, sensual, it's not for her, it's for attention. And that's something that we cannot judge from the outside perspective because we don't know, we're not inside someone's mind. But that's something that she knows because when she dresses up, when she's putting her makeup on, she has someone in mind. She has something in mind, an agenda, right? So, but that's something that's very personal. That's why we cannot judge people from the outside. And so the divine dark energy is very different. It's the energy of the womanhood and magic. So it's also the same energy as Mother Earth. So like the chaos of creation, destruction, death, and rebirth. So this divine order or sacred cycle, you can call it as well. It's also the energy of transformation, sacred rage. I should have said sacred here because it's very different from just regular rage. It's a rage that's from a place of loving humanity and hurt and earth from this very deep and loving and pure place. Also fierce compassion as well, compassion for all beings, even if people are in a lower state of consciousness, she still has compassion for people. That doesn't make a wrong right, but she does have compassion. She's very seductive, very magnetic, very attractive. Her aura is just very how do I describe this? Very intoxicating. And it's also the energy of pure spiritual ecstasy, right? Which sounds amazing. So, why this energy is so important right now and why we need it and why do we see so much women embodying this type of energy basically. So Untamed, I'm not sure because I'm French, so I'm probably pronouncing that word wrong, but when that dark feminine energy is not mastered, it's actually the opposite of suppression, which is where most women are. They're usually in that energy of suppression. So when this energy is not mastered, it makes you act recklessly, toxic, unable to access light feminine, to experience empathy, be receptive, nurturing, intuitive, and radiant. And it tends to be closely related to psychological issues such as hysteria, alcohol, drug abuse, and depression. So when this energy is not balanced with light feminine, that's where it creates those symptoms. And I could say, without putting any stereotypes on this, but when you look, for example, at this spicy industry, strip clubs, for example, you're going to see a lot of women in this type of energy because most women don't go to a priestess school. They don't know they're a priestess. So they get stuck into that cycle of shame. And so they get into that boss babe type of energy, which is there's nothing wrong about, being ambitious and making your own money. But when you go to the extreme of that, you end up repelling your soulmate, your dark masculine, right? And you end up in this lifestyle that might be very shallow. So it creates a lot of depression that's usually hidden with substances abuse. So that's where the chaos, comes from. So the rise of the dark feminine really helps a woman to heal her wounded feminine, right? By giving her the strength, the courage needed to create boundaries, which is usually something that the wounded feminine doesn't have, like at all. She's like a servant. Boss babe, hustle until she burns out and falls on the ground. And she really communicates clearly her wants and needs, right? And so, which is why we need that balanced dark feminine energy right now, not the toxic teenager that wants to rebel and shout at everybody, right? We need that very embodied dark feminine. And so she's an alchemist, which is really freaking amazing because that means that no matter what a woman went through, she can transmute that trauma and pain into soul power, into divine sovereignty. And so this happens when the dark and the light is integrated. And a very good example of a woman who embodied that energy very clearly is Mary Magdalene, which, she's an alchemist. She's a high priestess as well of the Hathor lineage. And so this is exactly what we talk about in my Dark Divine Goddess activation, because we really get into not just the education about this topic, but we get into the ritual that has to happen around this to really clear energetically all the blocks. And then we get into the routine, the spiritual practices. And they don't have to be done forever. It can be for a very short period of time, but still, they have to be very consistent for like 30 days, 40 days, right? And so let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? Do you feel activated by this type of energy? Do you feel like you relate as well to this type of energy? And also, if you want to connect with me, these are all my social medias as well. You can find me on Instagram with the handle exclusive by Hathor. And I'll see you in my next training. Don't forget to like as well and subscribe to my channel.